Hello, everybody, and we're going to talk about the concept of loss of domain. I'm Dr. Jignesh Gandhi, consultant surgeon from Mumbai, and we are going to discuss about this topic. So, to simplify the whole thing, it's like putting in a 2 kg sugar into a 1 kg bag, which is practically impossible unless you're going to open up and make the size of the bag bigger. This is all loss of domain is about. There was an international Delphi consensus with expert surgeon groups where patients like this, which are rarely seen in the clinical practice, but then often they would seek treatment from the surgeons in the past, had lots of problems to go through, or a case like this, where you can see that almost the whole of the abdominal cavity is out. These are the cases which were presenting as a challenge to the surgeons worldwide. And that's where we came out with the concept of loss of domain, because if we do not operate these patients in a scientific way, what happens is that they could land up in a lot of complications post-operatively, mainly into abdominal compartment syndrome and the consequences after that. So to define, today in the driver's seat, we have two prominent figures, Professor Sabaga from France and Professor Tanaka. And there are two ways in which we can define the loss of domain. The first is the Sabaga method, where you calculate the loss of domain as a hernia sac volume divided by the total peritoneal volume. So if you see here, it is about 20% in this particular case like this. On the other hand, if you see the Tanaka index, it talks about hernia sac volume, which is 20% divided by the abdominal cavity volume only. And that's why it is always in terms of the decimal or 0.25 or 25 percentage. So these are the two methods which are used commonly in the clinical practice. And because of this, we can come to a consensus about definition of loss of domain. So this is how one describes, and if you have 50% of the contents coming out, then it is known as a decimal 1. Tanaka on your left hand side is what we talked about, is the hernia sac volume divided by the abdominal cavity volume, while on the right hand side, the hernia sac volume divided by the total peritoneum volume is what the Sabaka method mentioned. And this is a famous paper which talked about it. Now, the problem only with the Sabaka method is that they use this different kind of CT software, and it requires a 16 to 32 slice CT scan in a multi-detector way. And what is important is that you have to exclude the retroperitoneum. So there is a little bit of learning curve where the surgeon, radiologist, they have to sit together to define the Sabaka properly. In the international consensus meeting which happened, there were three different concepts which were introduced. The concept number one was that if it is irreducible hernia due to lack of space, then that is also defined as a criteria for loss of domain. So if you see this particular case, it's irreducible because there is hardly any space in the upper part where the contents can be put inside. The second is, if you aim a primary closure without an augmentation technique, then you can land up in a trouble. So you need to have some kind of component separation release. Only then you can do this case comfortably. Without that, it is practically impossible. And the third criteria was that the primary closure would lead to compartment syndrome. So if by any chance, if you try to push this inside with pressure, you can lead into abdominal compartment syndrome. So these are the three criteria we can define your loss of domain very, very comfortably. So there are two options left now. Option A is whether we can reduce the contents, and second is whether we can increase the size of the bag or the peritoneal volume. In the reduction strategy, we have three ways: bowel resection or omentectomy, but these are very radical procedures and one would seldom probably like to avoid unless you are in a situation of irreducibility or strangulation. So how does one manage these patients in terms of increasing the size of the peritoneal volume? So if you see today, the criteria which define are that you need to give a good preoperative chest optimization to these patients. Option number one is progressive preoperative pneumoperitoneum, what we also call it as PPP. Option number two is Botox, where you put a relaxing incision in the lateral muscles, and then you have to do serial CT scans to check whether the loss of domain is corrected or no. So let us take this example of my patient to understand that. So the first option, which was described way back, almost 5 decades back, was muscle expander, but it went into a big disrepute. And then came in the concept of Botox by Thomas Ibarra. And what actually it does is It's a chemical component separation technique where you use this technique to paralyze the muscle. That means you make the muscles weaker, and by making the muscles weaker, you make the flaccid abdomen, and that's where the size of the bag or the content increases, and you can reduce everything very, very comfortably inside. It is usually a botulinum toxin A, and you typically give 300 units. So you dilute it with 150 ml of a dilute solutions of normal saline, and then you give it at three different points, at each point on the right and the left hand side, into all the three oblique muscles, the external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus. So these are the points which are marked. It is always given ultrasound guided, and then you give 8 ml each into three muscles at three sites, giving a total volume of 300 units. This is how it is done with the help of transducer. It's important to understand that when you're using this particular technique, the needle should be injected from inside out. So inject the inside muscle first, then you inject the internal oblique, and then you inject the external oblique. Because if you do it reverse way, then your transverse abdominis will try to push it away, and then you may not have the needle reaching to the TA. So this is a very important point which one has to remember. The second concept is progressive preoperative pneumoperitoneum, introduced by Goni Moreno, and this is the one which brought in a lot of help to patients. And the concept behind PPP was that it leads to progressive distension of the abdominal wall, and it also stabilizes the function of the diaphragm postoperatively to improve the ventilatory function. There is elongation of the muscles of the abdominal wall, thereby increasing the volume of the abdominal cavity. The pneumatic dissection of the visceral bands and the adhesions facilitate the reinsertion. That means you can reduce the contents inside comfortably. And finally, there is also a role of reactive vasodilatation with increased macrophages in the first days of application of PPP, which improves healing capabilities. So these are the 5 reasons where your PPP works in your clinical practice. It is typically done in our setup with the help of a nasogastric tube put in laparoscopic guided in the left upper abdomen. There are several ways described in the literature. And what you do is initially you put in the air as much which is there in the hernia sac volume to begin with. And then gradually these patients are initially, if you are doing in your setup, you do it on an inpatient basis. Later on, you can do it as an outpatient. You have to do daily insufflation, and when on 2 continuous days the girth remains the same, or if you have benefits which are satisfactory, as mentioned in Shumpelik's paper, that they have done 10 days of session and then they found that that was the best time you could get a maximum stretching of the oblique muscles. You can go up to 15 sessions, but there is no benefit beyond that. And by doing this, you can stretch the abdomen. The problems with this technique are, if it is not done correctly, it can lead to subcutaneous emphysema, intra-abdominal infections. Very rarely you can have lung complications, and it is contraindicated in patients with lung pathology. So most of these patients would require a deep vein thrombosis prophylaxis, just so that you do not land up with any other complications. So again, coming back to this patient of mine, where we had to use a preoperative progressive pneumoperitoneum, because Botox has its own cost involved. So if you look at the protocol today, a lot of centers would do a PPP, but there are instances where you have contracted muscles in the lateral abdominal wall, where you need to do a combination of both Botox and PPP. In such a case, the protocol is that you will first do a Botox, make the abdominal wall flaccid, then you will do your PPP, because the peak action at which you have to operate these patients is around 6 weeks from the time of doing all these protocols, because your PPP and your Botox action comes peak at 6 weeks. Beyond that, then the action starts going down. So remember that once you have given Botox, 6 weeks is the time up to which you can take up these patients for surgery. So this is the patient where you can see preoperatively there was a loss of domain, as we had calculated according to the Tanaka's index. And then we have given PPP in this patient, and now you can see that all those contents with all those 5 different mechanisms of PPP, they have gone inside. There is a good amount of help which has happened, and you can see it is replaced by air, and that's where you will take up these patients for surgery. And finally, you can see the results, that when you add on with an abdominoplasty, the whole of the abdomen shape completely changes, because now you have put all the contents back inside. This patient underwent a bilateral TAR, and you can see the results, and they do extremely well with this. So coming to the Delphi consensus which they had, and the place is in Greece, the word Delphi comes from there. What they didn't do in that was they didn't choose patients from Northern Africa, Middle East, and Indian subcontinent. So probably it is something to do with the demographics of the patient. So we need to have more papers coming in from our part of the world to define this properly so that we can have a consensus of loss of domain as far as our patients are concerned. And now, what is finally hot in the press is this article, which has come up as recently as 2021, that can hernia sac to abdominal cavity volume ratio predicted, or it can predict the facial closure rates. And the consensus which has come up from the US group is that 25% is a cutoff. So if you have 25% cutoff and more, then you will definitely need your patient to undergo some sort of component separation technique. Without that, it is going to be difficult for you to achieve a midline closure. So this is what is the latest. It's a very interesting paper to read, and they have talked about reliability of the Tanaka score. Sabaga score is also equally good, but as I told you that it requires an expertise in terms of the radiologist. It has to be done serially with 16 to 32 slide CT scan. So one needs to be very, very careful about it. I thank this gentleman, Alfonso Albanese, who way back in May 1946 came out with the concept of component separation technique, because of which today we have come into this world of abdominal wall reconstruction. And finally, this is a better slide which can tell you what actually the loss of domain means like. So you can see here, everything is out of proportion. And how do you fit all these guys into this? You better know better than me. Thank you so much. And these are my resources. I would be happy to take any questions at the end of it. Thank you very much for your kind patient hearing. Thank you to IIGS and all my colleagues at IIGS for giving me this opportunity. And it's a wonderful platform to be where in today's era, we need to have a more and more educational forums like this on the virtual forum so that we can pass on and continue with our continued medical education. So thank you very much once again, Team IIGS, for this fantastic opportunity, Dr. Ishwara Murthy and President Sir, Dr. Popat, and everyone there at IIGS to give me this opportunity. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.